Yo, what's up guys, welcome back. So recently Konami announced the first event in Master Duel being the ANTI-Xyz festival. So short said, basically, you can only use ANTI-Xyz monsters, right? But the thing is, and that's the catch, as something I mentioned in the previous video as well, is that how is Konami going to force or implement like this kind of event? I mean, you could, like, let's say play Eltish Stun, Domain Monarchs, True Draco, whatever, basically any deck that doesn't really need an extra deck, and capitalize on that because other people are forced to play ANTI-Xyz, right? You know what I mean. It's something that I'm eager to see how Konami is going to implement that. So for whatever reason, I would highly suggest to wait it out a little bit. Then the event will start next week, February 17th, if I'm not mistaken. So for all we know, Konami might announce, who knows, maybe a limited list, a forbidden and limited list, a ban list for this particular event, because of the most obvious reasons that I just mentioned, right? So the list here counts 10 cards that are highly specific counter to ANTI-Xyz. ANTI-Xyz summons the ANTI-Xyz summoning mechanic. Obviously there are more cards, more generic cards that might be better, Rivalry of Warlords, Gozen Match, Skill Drain, right, Vanity's Emptiness, and the list goes on. Obviously, right? But again, for all we know, Konami might hit any particular card. So just, take the particular list here with the grain of salt. The first one here, I think, again, if you say like an anti-Xyz card, Flying Sea definitely comes to mind. It has been quite popular in the past. People probably sometimes main decking it. Obviously, it depends on the format, but Flying Sea kind of acts like Mexi as well, to basically prevent your opponent from playing the game. Flying Sea, like if your opponent normal or special summons a monster, you can drop Flying Sea on your opponent's side of the field, and the controller of Flying Sea, in defense position by the way, the controller of Flying Sea can't ANTI-Xyz summon. Okay, your opponent could maybe crash Flying Sea into your attack position monster, but that's only during their next turn. So Flying Sea is a hard counter to basically any ANTI-Xyz deck. Satella Knights, Burning Abyss, Phantom Knights, Utopia, and the list goes on. So if Konami is going to release a ban list, Flying Sea might be on there because of the most obvious reasons again. The second card here is a card that is like a no-brainer. It has been super popular in TCG, OCG, because it hard counters extra deck based decks, and for example ANTI-Xyz, summoning as a whole, Pendulum, Synchro, and so on. And that's Dimensional Barrier. Barrier, it's just a normal trap card. As soon as you activate it, you need to declare like a card type. So that's either a Ritual, Fusion, and for us important here, ANTI-Xyz. And then here in this case, most importantly, your opponent can't, in this case ANTI-Xyz summon for the entire turn, so up until the end of the turn, plus all monsters of the declared card type, all of their effects are negated. So it's a mind-blowing powerful card, and next to Flying Sea, Dimensional Barrier is definitely one of those cards that Konami might just ban or limit, whatever, if they, going to implement something like that. So again, we wait it out. So Flying Sea, Dimensional Barrier. The next one is also a card that it has been somewhat popular as a side deck option in the past. The first format that comes to my mind that players actually side decked ANTI-Xyz Encore was a couple of years ago. It was during Rongo Bongo format. That the card as you see here is also in the extra deck. Is the card just says that depending on how many materials, ANTI-Xyz materials it has, your opponent can't do anything, right? So that's where ANTI-Xyz Encore comes into play, right? Like detaching and so on. So basically getting rid of that powerful ANTI-Xyz on your opponent's side of the field. So ANTI-Xyz Encore, it's definitely a card to watch out for, right? Especially if Konami decides to hit the more generic cards, maybe Floodgates, or force you into playing only extra deck or ANTI-Xyz based decks. The fourth one, I believe, is a no-brainer. It's Artifact-Xyz, and I mean, basically for any extra deck-based deck, Artifact-Xyz is a no-brainer. It blocks your opponent from using their extra deck for the entire turn, if it's summoned, for example, so you can't run Artifact, or at least the Link 2, Dagda. So Sanctum comes to mind. Artifact Sanctum, the trap that immediately special summons Xyz to your side of the field, and, you know, using its effect to block your opponent from using their extra deck. And let's face it, in like nowadays, that's probably going to be game if your opponent does not have any hand trap or Forbidden Chalice, for example, to prevent Artifact-Xyz from going off. So, like, again, the Artifact engine can basically be splashed into pretty much every deck. It's definitely also a ban-worthy card and as a whole, right, in TCG and OCG. The next one might be an odd one on this particular list, but it's Enemy Controller. Enemy Controller in the past has been somewhat popular in mirror matches, right? Let's say you're playing probably one of the more popular decks in this particular format, like Zodiac Beasts, and you're main decking Enemy Controller, like against your opponent's Zodiac deck as well. During the battle phase, you use Econ to take control of one of your opponent's Exceed monsters, Dryland or whatever, doesn't really matter which one. You attack, and during your main phase 2, you can use your opponent's monster for an Exceed summon of your own monster, like Zeus or your own Dryland maybe. You know, eventually use your opponent's monster to rank up even more Exceed monsters, or even maybe Downward Magician, which is also here as an option in the extra deck. So Enemy Controller in mirror matches, fantastic card. Plus, Econ Enemy Controller is also somewhat of a defensive card, very similar to Book of Moon, right? To put the opponent's monster in defense position. So fantastic card. 5 cards left, and this one, Forbidden Apocrypha. It's also a card that has been side-decked in the past. Was it like 2017-ish? The card states that you have to declare one monster card type, like Fusion, Synchro or Exceed, and then if 2 or more monsters of the declared type are on the field, both players need to send all monsters they control of that particular type from the field to the graveyard. So it's basically a board wipe for that particular card type. So here in this case, it's Exceed monsters. It's fantastic because, again, it's a trap card, so it kind of hits your opponent during their turn as well. Forbidden Apocrypha. The next one is Exceed Universe. Exceed Universe, again, one of those cards that, depending on the format, it has already been played in a TCG and or OCG, depending on, again, the format, but Exceed Universe states that you can target 2 Exceed monsters on the field, so that also counts your opponent's Exceed monsters, send them both to the graveyard, and then you special summon 1 Exceed monster from your own extra deck, and looking at both ranks of your opponent's Exceed monsters. So let's say at least the 2 monsters were both rank 4, then you can special summon 1 either rank 8, 2 times 4, or 1 rank lower, as the card states, so rank 7, from your own extra deck. So quite of a broken card if only extra deck monsters are being played, being, you know, Exceed monsters. So definitely take a look at Exceed Universe. The next one is maybe an odd choice, an odd card. I think we've never seen this card in the past in the TCG nor OCG. And that's Grisile Prison. It's very similar to Dimensional Barrier, but you need to control a face-up monster that was either Tribute Summoned, Ritual or Fusion Summoned, and then until the end of your opponent's next turn, neither player can, you know, Synchro or Exceed Summon Synchro monsters, and, you know, those monsters are the same type, cannot attack, or at least their effects are negated as well. So it's very similar to Dimensional Barrier, so just in case if Konami decides to ban Dimensional Barrier, Grisile Prison might be something to look at. 2 cards left. Next one is Invincibility Barrier. Kind of similar to, again, Dimensional Barrier. It's a continuous trap as well, so once per turn. That might be important. You have to banish probably, you know, 1 Ritual, 1 Fusion, Synchro, Exceed or Pendulum monster, doesn't really matter which one, depending on which one you want to hit. And then this turn, the effects of monsters with the same card type as the banished monsters are negated. So very similar again to Dimensional Barrier. But of course, Barrier is much better. The last one is a superb card, and again is also one of those cards that again has been side-decked in the past in both TCG and OCG, is Stygian Dirge. It's again a continuous trap card that states that all of your opponent's monsters, their levels are reduced by 1. So if you take a look at Satella Knights, mostly based on rank 4 exceeds, Utopia, rank 4, PK, Phantom Knights, rank 3, Burning Abyss, rank 3, and the list goes on. So if your opponent controls BA monsters, Utopia monsters, Satella Knights monsters, all of their levels will be reduced by 1, and that basically blocks them from using their strategy, because most of their extra decks only, or at least only have that rank 3 or rank 4 engine. So Stygian Dirge is again a very powerful anti-Xyz card that, again, depending on which cards Konami hits, might be something to look out for. So again, wait it out a little bit. If Konami is going to, like release some form of ban list, which I personally expect they might do and hit the more generic cards, then some cards of this particular list might be worth looking into. Okay, guys, that's it. Thanks for watching. Feel free to leave a comment or like if you enjoyed the video. Signing out. Peace.